So I'm curious, when you became connected back with your mom, how you how did your emotional connections with others change?
I think
What did you
it was a very slow process. I won't say that once I reconnected with my mom, that's when everything changed. It was a very slow process of learning, in a sense, relearning um, behaviors that I should have learned at a younger age. You know, maybe other people in who grew up in better homes would have 20, 25 years of experience working through their emotions, and you could say that I was just born trying to learn all this. And through that process, I used a lot of resources. I used a lot of books. I used a lot of especially books on psychology. I would try and be more involved with my friends. There were a lot of moments in my life, even now, where I would recognize that I wasn't mentally present in the moment. So, what I mean by this is I could be having a mundane conversation with a friend, and I'm just kind of parroting whatever my friend is saying, maybe mirroring it, just so that I don't have to be actively involved in the conversation while I mentally think about something else. And so this kind of mental multitasking that I would develop and that I've developed across the years, and I still do, um, would mean that I'm not present. You know, what it's almost like somebody is playing squash by themselves. They could just bounce their ideas off of me and it bounce right back to them, and they feel like they're getting a decent conversation out of it, but I'm not actually there. It's not a game of tennis where we're bouncing a ball back and forth. He's just bouncing it off of a stone wall. And so in that instance, I had to recognize these moments and say, hold on a moment. I'm actually not mentally here, and I should be. I should give this person my time and my full attention because, one, it's a point of respect, it's a point of connection, and it will give me the opportunity to recognize the more subtle nuances of building a relationship with somebody, whether that's as friends, that's intimate, or even just within between myself and my mother. And when I was able to do that, even even on a smaller scale, and a more, you could say, immature or underdeveloped scale, I was able to at least unlearn some of the mistakes I was making. One of the big ones being not being mentally present.
And so what do you get when what do you get that's even more meaningful when you're mentally present?
There definitely is an emotional element of it that is not. So, for example, if when I'm not mentally present, I'm more apathetic to what's happened. Somebody could be excited about something, and I would mirror that excitement just enough so that they feel good about themselves, but I wouldn't feel that excitement that they're feeling, if that makes sense. And so what would end up happening, they're bouncing their ideas off of me like playing squash by yourself, and instead of me being there and sharing an experience with somebody, I would be just pretty much mirroring that energy back and thinking about things that I thought were more important. And so instead of engaging in that kind of behavior, I would try and focus more on being mentally present. And then I feel their emotions, I feel the things that they're feeling, and I understand why they are the kind of person that they are. And it's almost like you're being allowed to see through the eyes of another person just by experiencing those emotions that they are experiencing. And in that regard, you feel more connected with a person and you feel more open to share experiences that will resonate with them. Not in the sense like how I described earlier, where you're just taking this big bucket of trauma and dropping it on their feet. Instead, it's more of a relational thing where maybe that's not something I need to share about that I feel insecure about. Maybe it's the need to be the best at something, or maybe it's that fear of not being good enough, or that fear of not being somebody who my older siblings could look up to, for example. And what ends up happening is they in turn will feel closer and more understanding of myself versus Andrew being this, you could say, mystical lone wolf figure who is there when you need it, but never asked anyone to be there for him.
Right. And taking all of that into consideration, what you just shared, what's valuable about that to you right now?
Well, you feel more alive. You feel more happier considering that instead of being a lone wolf, instead of being somebody that is standing alone, but trying to do all the impossible things that most people would never even consider trying to do, you feel like you actually have some semblance of belonging in the world. You feel like you have people that you can rely on and you can accept, and that regardless of all the personal flaws that we carry as human beings, that I, as an individual, am okay. I don't have to feel like the a perfect paragon of quintessential achievement. You know, I don't have to be this apex of humanity. I can just be a truer version of myself.
You're okay.
Hmm.
Mm. Truer version of yourself.
And so, in relation to the alienated child, this is obviously leagues beyond what they're going to be thinking about, and that obviously, as parents, you're going to want your child to push themselves towards this level of self-actualization. And in order to help them reach that, they have to start to see the patterns of that fear, that anger, and that frustration that is holding them back and preventing them from growing their identity and growing their emotional intelligence.
So that's a call you're putting out there to erased parents,
Oh, absolutely.
as a way to respond to their child that's gone through a process of alienation, child abuse,
And I
alienation.
would go so far as to make that same challenge to the erased parents as well, because the best way we can help people is by leading by example. And your your alienated child is not going to feel motivated to live that life because it's a painful process. It's a very destructive process. I mean, in the Buddhist sense, you know, it's destructive. You are taking away the things that, well, you're taking away the negative reactions, the coping mechanisms that sometimes we think define our behavior. Removing those and identifying the source of pain and healing the original wounds. And in doing so, you're able to live a more fulfilled life, a more peaceful life that is not a knee jerk reaction to old wounds caused by other people. And so we lead by example, and your children will see that. They'll see that peaceful behavior. They'll see that sense of strength, and they'll recognize that, and they will admire that. And the first thing
They'll
the
feel that.
first thing, yeah, and the first thing that everybody thinks about in turn when it comes to admiration is how do they get there and how do I get there? And there's a reason why we admire the strong people. There's a reason why we admire the like all these top percenters in anything, be it athletes, finance, business, um, or coaches, etc. We look up to them. We see the strength they carry, and we say, you know, I want to be like that. So likewise, your child's going to see the strength that you carry, and they're going to want to become more like that. If an erased parent allows themselves to be a victim of their emotions and a victim of the traumas they've gone through. They're going to have all these angry, knee-jerk reactions, and the child's going to say that and say, well, I don't really want to be with you because there's so much drama involved. And so that's why it's a call for personal work, because that is how you're able to lead by example. In doing so, you pave the road for your alienated child to walk that path as well.